last video. And as you can see, we've got a new setup here because today we are going to be talking about the Xbox One X and if it's still worth it in 2020. So the Xbox One X has a pretty minimalist design. It's all black, which I really like. It's not really meant to catch the eye like the PS5 or anything like that. It's kind of like two slabs. You've got one slab on the bottom that's sort of thin. Then you got one that's a bit taller and a bit wider and also a lot thicker on top of that slab, which also allows for you to put it in this vertical orientation without needing a stand like the Xbox One S. So yeah, it does fit in both vertical and horizontal orientations. Microsoft does recommend it in a horizontal orientation, but you can get a vertical stand for this Xbox One X that allows it to be in this vertical orientation without sacrificing the airflow, because there's a fan up here, there's a fan over here as well, so both sides, and it all comes out through the back. So this is blocking some of that air, half of that air that's supposed to be coming into the Xbox. So that is a problem. You might notice performance decrease if you do choose to keep your Xbox One X like this without a stand. The Xbox One X is also very compact. It will fit under a TV, unlike some of the new consoles out there. And it's made entirely of plastic on the outside. It's a plastic enclosure, but that really doesn't matter that much because, I mean, the point of a console is that it's stationary, so you're not really going to be touching it that much or bringing it places or keeping it in your lap or something like that while you're gaming, so it doesn't really matter that much. The next part is the controller. So this controller is not too different from the new one. The new Xbox wireless controller has a USB-C port on top, it's got a better D-pad, it's got a new share button, it's got textured bumpers and triggers, and I think it's a bit smaller overall. And this curve right here is also gone, so that controller is completely flat. This curve is still here on this controller. So these controllers are really good. They've got 4 vibration motors. I think there's one on each side of the controller, and there's actually one in each trigger. These controllers also have Bluetooth, so you can connect it with your phone and stuff like that. With properly optimized vibration, you can get still a pretty good experience. So if you've seen the new DualSense controller with the PS5, that's got resistive triggers, and it's also got haptic feedback in the controller itself. And many people have said that that is a very immersive experience. Well, all of that is true. I feel like very well optimized games for the Xbox One X, like Forza Motorsport 7 for example, they managed to make the vibration of this controller really good. So in a game like Fortnite, that's on almost every platform minus iOS, you don't really get that much advantage from vibration. It's just you vibrate a bit when you hit the ground, you vibrate when something explodes, that's all. But with a game like Forza Motorsport 7, there's vibration on different sides. So let's say I'm going to the side off-road, and I'm going left, on the left side of the track, I'm going off-road. Then the left side of the controller starts to vibrate, and then once I completely go off track, the right side of the controller starts to vibrate too. And the level, the intensity of the vibration also changes depending on what material. If it's the little red and white line thing that's right next to the road, that'll be a bit stronger than when it goes onto the grass, or maybe it's the other way around. Alright, so the other big thing about this controller is the use of AA batteries. So this is just like the headphone jack slowly disappearing. Sony with the DualShock 4, they took away AA batteries all the way back then. They already put an integrated battery into the DualShock 4, but Microsoft have chosen to keep the AA batteries onto the Xbox Series X and S controllers, and they're still on the Xbox One controllers as well. Now, with the new Xbox wireless controllers, there's something called the plug-and-play charge kit. So it's basically just a rechargeable battery pack that you can just plug in every time you're done playing. Lots of third-party sellers also sell rechargeable battery packs and recharging stands for your Xbox controllers instead of just replacing the batteries whenever you're done. But the one main advantage to AA batteries is the resale value. If I wanted to sell this controller, all I'd have to make sure is just that it's not too worn and torn and it's just in good shape. I won't have to worry about the batteries. But when it comes to something like the PS4, the DualShock 4 controller, since that thing has an integrated battery, if I were to sell that controller, like let's say now, and I had it since let's say 2016, so now I've had it for 4 years, and I've been hitting and ruining the battery for 4 years. If somebody was to buy that, they would have pretty bad battery life compared to what I had when I bought that DualShock 4 controller. But when it comes to something like this, because it has those AA batteries, the buyer can just swap out the batteries whenever they want to. If this is just in good shape, I give it to them, it'll still have pretty good resale value compared to the original purchase price. And the thing about integrated batteries is that they age. That's just how science works. So no matter what, if you wanted to replace that DualShock 4 controller's battery, you'd have to open it up and replace it yourself, or go take it to somewhere where you would be able to replace it. But this is just so much simpler when you want to replace the battery. You don't have to worry about the battery life gradually decreasing, and you can always increase it by just buying better AA batteries that have longer battery life. So games. PlayStation has much better exclusives than Xbox, that's just the thing. But Xbox does have Xbox Game Pass, which is basically where you pay a subscription, I think it's $10 or $15 a month, and you have access to over hundreds of games that you can just download onto the console and play, like I said, for $10 or $15 a month. Xbox also does have Project xCloud, or the Xbox Game Pass is also a streaming service. It's on PC and on Android, and this is also, it's just a game streaming service like Google Stadia, Amazon Luna, NVIDIA GeForce Now. It falls under that category. Now, Xbox does also have enhanced games like Xbox One X enhanced, Xbox Series S and X enhanced. Like I said, Forza Motorsport 7 is an Xbox One X enhanced game, and this basically just allows for high resolutions and better frame rates and just an overall better experience in that game. So how does the One X stack up against the next generation? So the Series X is the successor to the One X, and the Series S is the successor to the One S. So the One X and the Series S will have overlap. Now, I'm not going to compare the One X to the Series X because the Series X creams the One X in every single department, pretty much. So let's compare the One X to the Series S. So the One X has more raw graphical power, 6 teraflops versus 4 teraflops on the Series S, which means that, yeah, it's just more powerful on paper. But when it comes to actual games, the Series S supports 120 FPS gaming versus 60 FPS gaming, which is the best that you can get on the One X. However, the Series S can only output at a maximum resolution of 1440p, whereas the One X can output at up to 4K and also 60 frames per second. And the Series S can only do 120 frames at 1080p. Once it gets to 1440p, it's capped at 60. When it comes to storage, the Xbox Series S has a 512GB custom-built Xbox Velocity Architecture SSD, as opposed to the 1TB HDD, or hard disk drive, that's in the One X. Now, the SSD, being custom-built, allows for features like quick resume and just much faster loading times on the Xbox Series S, whereas the Xbox One X is lacking that because the HDD is much slower. Now, of the 512GB SSD on the Series S, only 364 gigs are usable versus the 780 usable gigabytes of storage out of the 1TB hard disk drive that's on the One X. Now, the Series S also does have proprietary expansion cards, but those are quite expensive. Basically, the price of another Xbox Series S, I think it's $220 for a 1TB expansion card. But it is as fast as the SSD because it's also custom built. It's, I think, a collab between Microsoft and Seagate to create that. But the One X does not really have any proprietary storage expansion like that. But it does have quite a big hard drive so you can store many games. Finally, the main big point between these two consoles is that the One X has a disk drive. It has the disk slot so you can put in a CD and play CD games, whereas the One S is all digital, which means that you can only play downloaded games. So, finally, should you buy an Xbox One X in 2020? It all comes down to this. If you are a casual gamer that does not care about all this next-gen stuff, like 120 FPS gaming, for example, and 8K gaming and stuff like that, and you just want, you know, a console that's cheap. You can only find it used, you can't find it new anymore. And like, as in cheap, I mean like cheaper than $300, because the Series S is pretty cheap for a next-gen console at $300. But also, you do use that disc drive, like the CD slot, and you do play a lot of CD games. Like, let's say, a lot of older gen games, like a 360 game that is, like an Xbox 360 game that's backwards compatible with the Xbox Ones. And this is the sort of stuff that you care about, and maybe you can also appreciate that you have 780 gigs, or a terabyte basically, of storage where you can also download digital games. Then you could go for the One X. Also, if you want like stuff like 4K gaming, which is absent on the Series S. But if you do care, you know, a bit about the next gen stuff like 120 FPS gaming, but you don't care too much about the resolution, like you're fine with 1080p because maybe you play on a monitor, or you don't really care about 4K is the point. And you also don't mind that you're losing a disk drive because you play all digital games. And then that's where the Series S is probably a better option. Also, you do have to keep in mind that you can only store a couple of games on that 512 gig SSD, like I said, of only which 360 gigs are actually usable, which is like 5 reasonably sized games, as it does cost basically another Xbox Series S to expand that storage, which actually, when you combine those two, like a $300 Xbox Series S with that like $200 or $220 expansion card, you can buy an Xbox Series X. So you do need to keep that in mind. You make the choice if you are going for this. Personally, I would recommend the Series S, but I would not discount the One X because it is still a wonderful console. My main point is that if you have one of these and you still don't care about next gen stuff, and you are considering upgrading to a Series S, I wouldn't necessarily do it because the One X is still a really good console. It's not obsolete yet, and it should stay relevant for probably the next 3 to 5 years. And after those 3 or 5 years, I might upgrade as well. So yeah, let me know down in the comments if you're picking up the One X, or if you're getting a Series S, or a Series X, or a PlayStation 5. We can hang out in the comments and talk for a while there. But anyways, that's it for the video. Thanks so much for watching, and that's it for me.